Hello and welcome to another splashing episode of Talk to the Fish. Now we've got our question from the viewer, Arid Angler, who asks, does trampoline can help prevent decompression sickness? Sounds to me someone's trying to jump to conclusions about DCS prevention.
Now that's an interesting topic that deserves more than just surface attention.
So Regis, help us to understand. And please, use small words. Not all of us have 3 hearts and a brain wrapped around our throats.
Well, Jack, before I explain the potential benefits, our viewers need to understand the hidden seeds of the problem. Bubble nuclei.
Bubble. What now? Sounds something you'd find in a fancy underwater restaurant.
Decompression sickness happens because of bubbles. When divers breathe air at higher pressure, nitrogen dissolves into blood and tissues, just as fizz dissolves in a sealed soda bottle.
So our human friends become walking soda bottles.
Ascend too quickly and the gas forms bubbles that can cause pain, dizziness, or worse.
Nobody wants to feel queasy after a beautiful dive. Where do these troublemakers first appear?
Scientists believe bubbles often begin at tiny pre-existing spots called bubble nuclei. Microscopic imperfection, perhaps tiny gas pockets clinging to blood vessel walls.
So they're the scratches inside a glass where soda bubbles form. I've seen humans tap their glasses to watch that happen.
Exactly. These nuclei act as seeds for larger bubbles to grow during decompression. They're the starting point for all the trouble.
So these sneaky little seeds are the true villains of our diving story. And trampolines somehow fight these underwater troublemakers?
It's actually a research area. They're looking into whether physically agitating the body before a dive could reduce those bubble nuclei.
You mean shaking things up before going down? Sounds suspiciously similar to my pre-dive wiggle dance.
Not far off. The thinking is that shaking or vibrating the body might cause those tiny unstable gas pockets to collapse before they grow into larger bubbles during decompression.
Let me get this straight. We're telling divers to shake themselves the way my cousin does when predators approach.
Consider that soda bottle example again. If you shake it while it's still capped, some dissolved gas forms small bubbles under pressure, which then get reabsorbed.
And so, come in action, the trampoline. It might help with this pre-dive shake-up.
Light bouncing on a trampoline could mess with the bubble nuclei, potentially helping prevent DCS.
So instead of warming up with stretches, divers should be bouncing around. What else works?
A bumpy ride on a rib boat might help too. Those vibrations from speeding over choppy water before diving might provide enough physical agitation to collapse nuclei in tissues.
That explains why divers always look happier after a rough boat ride. I thought they were just grateful to be alive.
This remains a hypothesis that researchers are investigating, whether these pre-dive shakes can effectively reduce active bubble nuclei, creating a preconditioning effect.
So we're talking about a legitimate scientific theory, not just an excuse for divers to play on trampolines. Is there actual evidence this works?
Scientists test if pre-dive agitation works by looking for specific signs after the dive that indicate reduced bubble activity and less stress on the body.
They're not just asking divers if they feel floaty or tingly after the dive. How scientific of them.
They look for reduced vascular gas emboli, or VGE, which are microbubbles detected in a diver's bloodstream after a dive, usually using ultrasound.
So they're literally counting the bubbles, taking a census of these troublemakers. If the trampolining works, there should be fewer of these ninja bubbles, right?
Correct. Less nuclei beforehand means fewer bubbles later, which is how they measure if these methods work.
What else do these lab coat-wearing fish watchers look for?
They also monitor endothelial changes. Our blood vessels are lined with a delicate layer called the endothelium that can become stressed by bubbles.
The endo-what-lium?
Think of it as fine wallpaper lining your blood vessels. Bubbles bumping along can rough it up. Researchers check for signs of less stress to this lining.
So it's checking if the interior decorating of your blood vessels survived the party. And fewer bubble guests means less damage to the fancy wallpaper.
By potentially decreasing bubble starting points before taking on nitrogen, you might stack the odds in your favor for safer decompression.
Wait, a few minutes on a trampoline might save divers from the bends? That sounds as unlikely as eating ice cream preventing shark attacks.
It's not magic, but research looks promising, showing fewer bubbles for divers who use these methods, especially with safe diving practices.
Before we float away, any quick final thoughts for our viewers who might want to bounce their way to better diving?
Remember that while these techniques show promise, they are supplements, not replacements, to proper dive planning, conservative profiles, and adequate hydration.
Huge thanks to Regis for shedding light on this bubbly topic. That's all for today's episode of Talk to the Fish. I must admit, I've never felt so educated about human diving problems, considering I solve mine by just staying shallow. Next week, we'll tackle dolphin dialects. Are they gossiping about your wetsuit? Which I'm certain will make today's episode seem deflated in comparison. Until then, keep your nuclei collapsed and your ascents slow, because being bent isn't a good look for anyone. Swim you later.
Forget all the troubles and blues. Dive into the blue. Oh yes, talk to the fish.